It's time to give the trees a good drink of water before winter.
Welcome to Lawn Tips with Lou.
I have one of my helpers here today. This is Mookie. When I first moved to Texas in 1989, I bought a gardening book by Neil Sperry. Neil Sperry went to Texas A&M University and also to Ohio State University. He's published several books on lawn and gardening, and for years has hosted a radio show addressing questions that people have regarding their lawns, shrubs, and trees. One piece of advice that has stuck with me over the years is to make sure that the trees and shrubs are well watered going into the cold weather. Cold damage is worse when the soil is allowed to dry out. The soil moisture helps to reduce freeze injury. My sprinkler system includes a bubbler system at each of the trees. Other options to water the trees include simply letting a water hose slowly drip around the root system for the trees. Or you can use a root feeder that some people call a watering rod, but I've always called it a root feeder. I've had my root feeder for years, and that's what I'll use around my trees and crepe myrtles in this demonstration. A key to using the root feeder is to not put the rod too deeply into the ground. For trees, the majority of the root system will be less than 12 inches below the surface of the ground. So it's important to slowly inject the water into the soil at a depth between 8 inches and 12 inches. For shrubs, the root feeder should be at a depth of around 6 to 8 inches. For my shrubs in the front yard, I have a drip irrigation system. Another benefit of using the root feeder system is that you can buy fertilizer capsules that you can put into the root feeder and just use the root feeder then to inject fertilizer into the soil around the roots of the trees and the shrubs. If we were to do that, you simply remove the cap from the root feeder, and the tablets simply insert right in here. Put the cap back on, and then you turn the water supply on and inject, put the root feeder rod into the soil around the roots of the trees, and it fertilizes the roots. I have a box of the root feeder refill fertilizer tablets. Looking at the back, if we can kind of focus in, kind of gives you information as far as the amount of refills to use on each feeding. And as you can see, it says feed early spring and late summer. Being that we're in the fall, I'm not going to put the fertilizer down. It also gives you instructions on where to inject the fertilizer around the drip zone around the tree. To operate the root feeder, you turn on the water supply, and on mine it has an on-off switch right here. You just turn the lever back to the on position to turn the water supply to the feeder on, and turn it off simply as that. One other thing that I want to point out is that as you turn the water supply on in the root feeder, the water sprays out at the end. Okay, for each location where you want to insert the rod before pushing it into the ground, what I do is I turn the water supply on just a little bit and then start inserting the rod into the ground. And as I go down, I turn the water supply on full. And being that for trees at a depth of 8 to 10 inches is sufficient, because most of the roots are within 12 inches of the surface of the ground. For each location that you inject water into the soil, you want to let it run for a few minutes just to make sure that it gets lots of moisture down deep into the root system around the trees. Okay, to remove the rod, what I do is I kind of turn down the water flow a little bit, and then as I get close to removing it, I turn it off all the way. And then you see the ground pressure pushing some of the water back out of the ground after you remove the rod. Then I'll follow this procedure to each of the crepe myrtles and to the other tree in the backyard, as well as the crepe myrtle and trees in the front yard. Does using the root feeder work? I think so. Just looking at my elm trees, they still have most of their leaves. But looking across the street at the neighbors' elm trees, their trees have lost all of their leaves for the year. Thank you for watching Lawn Tips with Lou. I hope you've enjoyed the video and my 2 helpers today. Please click the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.